Part 3, Chapter 1, Definitions of Distribution and Rent. It has already been remarked that the production and the distribution of the annual income of a society can be sharply separated, and the reader must have observed that more or less have and has been said about the four parts into which the products of industry are usually divided, namely wages, interest, profits, and rent. Taxes may perhaps be regarded as a fifth part, into which the annual income of a society is divided, and we may treat taxes as part of which society, organized by the state, receives for its participation in production. But in this view is taken, we have a fifth part, and peculiar in so many respects that it is desirable to treat it neither under production nor distribution. The greater part of distribution might undoubtedly be considered under the general heading production, but on the other hand, it is frequently asserted that distribution is the true center of all economic inquiries, and it would be possible to treat nearly the whole production from the standpoint of distribution. The truth is that these old traditional divisions of subject matter indicate different points of view, and on this account it seems desirable to retain them. When we pass from production to distribution, we do not enter by any means an entirely new field, but we look at an old field of investigation from a new point of view. We have to discuss under the name distribution two different processes, definitions of distribution and rent. The first and inclusive meaning of the term is distribution of the wealth or income of a society among individuals and families. In other words, the question of individual fortunes, poverty, and wealth. This distribution is to a large degree the result of conscious effort on men's part to control it. The second kind of distribution is the division of the product among the different factors of production. This is not a question of wealth versus poverty, but of wages versus interest, profits, rent, etc., etc. Of course, this kind of distribution affects the question of private fortunes very considerably, but is by no means the same question. It is not all clear that it would not be better to call this kind of distribution by a different name. But here, as in the case of capital usage is too strong for us, we must consider two things under one name. There is a need of care, therefore, that we know just which idea is meant when the word is used. There is another sense in which the word is not used in economics. We never mean by distribution the moving of goods about over the country from the point where they are manufactured to the place where they are consumed. When we hear of railways and other concerns as distribution agencies, we're using the word distribution in a sense wholly different from that of the economic term distribution. Distribution is a question of ownership, not a question of location of goods. This brings us to the question of institution of private property and recalls the fact that whatever may be the origin of private property's present existence is due to government. It is not the individual who maintains the distribution of private property or modifies it by conscious effort, but the state. Now, the question of private fortune depends primarily upon the action of the state regarding private property. This general distribution is therefore a question not of private but of public economics, and its consideration comes in the book 3. Our attention in this place will therefore be confined to the subsidiary process of dividing the result of the production among the different factors which have combined to produce them. This process, which we may call product distribution, is chiefly controlled by conscious social forces, and the state interferes only in a general way, to a limited extent, with the workings of these forces. Such conscious interference as there is largely the work of private organizations. Rent is that which is paid for the use of the land. In spite of sundry attempts to extend the meaning of the word, it has remained one of the best defined, at least ambiguous, terms in economic science. But while economists are nearly agreed in their use of the term, popular meaning of the word is much less exact. That which is paid for the use of a house or a building of any sort is commonly called rent, we shall see what this so-called rent really consists of two elements. One, a ground rent, or rent proper. The other, a capital rent, or what we shall call gross rent. If this distinction seems fanciful, it is only because we are accustomed to see the two united under one ownership, but it is most large cities separate ownership is common. Sometimes one man owns the land and leases it for a long term of 2 years to another, or erects buildings upon it, which either with or without payment becomes the property in the landowner at the expiration of the lease, unless it is renewed. And if it is renewed, the one who possesses the house must frequently pay for it often. However, the separation in ownership is a permanent one, the homeowner paying perpetually an annual sum for the use of the ground. This is the case in Baltimore, for example, where ground rents are an important feature in an economic life of the city. Damn, what the fuck? In such cases, the two kinds of rent are clearly distinguished. We shall see later that they are really governed by different laws, so that while capital brings a less return, as society develops, land brings an increasing return. Let us remember that Let us remember then that in the economic discussion, generally the term rent only means income from land, and that it is only used in the sense in following discussion. Definitions of distribution and rent. The principal difficulty connected with the subject of rent lies in determining the law which governs its amount, as already been said. The portion of produced goods falling to the share of different factors of production is determined in the first instance by laws independent of human contraventions. Of course, men